House tonight. We are talking about his new book, Acquisitional Wealth, the fastest, most proven way to create life-changing prosperity. Now, I know you know about Josh. He's the founder and CEO of Kavana Rum, CEO of Shift Capital, CEO of Kingsbridge, and a well-known talk show host, best-selling author, regarded really as the global voice of business. I'm sure you have seen and listened to his show. I think he's done over 1,000 interviews, probably 2,000 radio broadcasts. So amazing. I think, what was it, 40 million views, I think, on the show. But we're here to talk about his new book. Josh, welcome to the program.
Cynthia, Rhett, it is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here to give us both insight into the book, but also some knowledge because these questions we have, I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready to hear the answer. I'll go ahead and jump in because
Sure.
here we are at Acquisitional Wealth, the fastest, most proven way to create life-changing prosperity. Isn't acquisitional wealth for the wealthy is what I always thought, right? Is you get money and then you use that money to buy things. You get more money. But what you're saying is that the best and most practical way for people with average or even low incomes to jumpstart their financial future is through acquisitions. Give us the breakdown.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it is the most proven way in history to do this. Real estate, for example, is only about 500 years old for people like you and I. Prior to that, it was either owned by a king, a warlord, or nobody owned it because the earth is our mother and we were just tribal people. So real estate is really only about 500 years old. However, buying and selling companies, as far as we know, is over 3,000 years old because we have it written in stone where people were buying and selling businesses. So for thousands of years, literally, you gained wealth by buying businesses. And when you compare that to other sort of things you can buy, real estate, stocks, gold, Bitcoin, all that, and I'm in all of that. So this isn't, only go my way. No, all of those are my way. I love them all. I got them all. But when you look at the asset that you can purchase that creates the biggest, fastest improvement in kind of a lifestyle, by far, it is buying a business that is already running, already profitable, and you're just taking over for the owner. So to kind of dovetail that into your question, is it just for the wealthy? No, no. When I talk about this in like live audiences, the question always comes in, well, if this is wonderful, why isn't everybody doing it? Everybody is. Everybody. And that's why you think it's for the wealthy. Every billionaire you can name does this. Every large company you can name does this. The only difference is we weren't taught to do it. So is it only for the wealthy? No. You can buy a business with $50,000 down, $100,000 down. I've purchased businesses for $1 down. There's some asterisks to that. I wouldn't recommend that, contrary to what some of these internet experts want you to believe. But no, you don't. And even if you don't have any money, there's sweat equity. So I've done deals where we've put no money in, but due to what services my company can provide, we get a portion of ownership, and then I can take a loan out on that portion and buy another company the traditional way. So yeah, this works for anybody and everybody. And then once you start talking about how you can use your 401k or your home equity to buy a company, there is no reason why this can't work for 9 out of 10 people listening to this right now.
I was listening to something the other day, and the conversation was about, this is the sort of the golden age, right, of being able to buy a business. You've got
Yeah.
baby boomers retiring. You've got, this whole generation of people who had great small businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have anywhere to, the kids don't want to take them over, or they don't have kids or whatever. But so is that true? Is this
Yeah.
really the time to buy?
Really, it's any time. So, there's no, would I have done this 50 years ago if I was alive? Yeah. Will I do it 50 years from now, even if we live in a communist, socialist, Marxist country? Yeah. There's always opportunities for entrepreneurship through acquisition, always. Even in prison. That's a whole little rabbit trail, but entrepreneurship always exists no matter what the political climate. With that being said, though, yes, now is absolutely wonderful. We have over 33 to 35 million businesses in America from coast to coast, over 140 million businesses around the world. Most of them are owned by people who are in the older generations, not even just the younger baby boomers, but even the great generation. The average age of an entrepreneur in North America is 59 and a half. So in order to get an average of 59, that means every 20-year-old who owns a vape shop in the strip mall, there's a 90-year-old who's still running the family jewelry store. So absolutely. And you're right in the fact that kids don't want to take over. So for the first time in a few thousand years, we seem to not be seeing the tradition of passing on the business to the next generation. And that's in every ethnic demographic. Doesn't matter if it's white, black, people from India, people from Asia, it doesn't matter. There's just this we don't want to take over sort of phenomenon. So there are tens of millions of business owners who don't have the exit plan right now that they always thought they did. So yeah, absolutely.
So interesting the way you're talking about it, because I've seen this in some of my clients too. They're like, they're in this place of, what do I do next? I'm curious. You're saying, okay, you can have $1, you can have 50,000, you can do sweat equity. What are the actual like mindset hurdles, right? What are preconceived notions that people have about purchasing a business that get in the way?
Yeah, so first it's the math. Typically the math gets in the way, like, wait a second, how can that happen? So let's just run through one of those real quick. Let's say somebody had $100,000 saved up, and saved doesn't mean cash in the bank. It could be saved in your home, saved in the 401k, whatever. But you have $100,000 saved up. You take that number, multiply it by 10. That's going to give you the value of the business you can buy. So $1 million business. Take that $1 million business divided by 3, and that's typically the benefit to the owner. So that would be 333. So let's just say 330 grand. So now that new owner has an economic benefit of $330,000 a year for a one-time down payment of $100,000. Well, if you compare that to real estate or pretty much anything else, what else gives you a 300% ROI your first year? And then once your capital is out, you're working on an infinite return. That's typically one of the hardest, biggest things for people to kind of like, wait. So I could be making $50,000 a year, have a $100,000 401k, and 6 months from now be making 300 grand a year? Yes. Abso-stinking-lutely yes. So followed right behind that is, well, I mean, come on, Josh, if these businesses were making money, why would they be for sale? And again, that just kind of goes to show the lack of business education that we're providing people. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, just a lack of education. Because the number one reason people are selling their business is age. We've talked about that already. But you follow that right up with health. You follow that right up with divorce. We're at a 30 to 50% divorce rate. You follow that right up with, we just want to be done. We had a couple that were selling their assisted living facility. The husband was 71. The wife was 69. They point blank just looked us right in the face and said, hey, we want to get out of here before we have to move in. So once you get over the math of how does this work, once you get over the reason why would people even sell a profitable business, then it comes to, well, wait a second, what about the debt on the loan to buy the business? And that one is typically a sticking spot, because for most people, their largest expense is probably their either rent or mortgage, usually. So you take somebody who's paying $2,000 a month in a mortgage payment and then say, okay, your new payment on your new business is $17,000 a month. And they start to have a little heart attack, a little like, oh my God, who's going to pay for that? And again, you know, the first response is, well, that comes out of the 300,000 that I make, right? Doesn't have to. I mean, it could, even if it did, still the best investment you could make, but it doesn't have to. You could sell more products. You could raise the price of the products. You could reduce the costs of operating the business. You could pay it out of your income from the business, or a combination blend of all 4 of those. So those are the major objections or the concerns, but none of them make rational sense once you start breaking it down.
This is how I got my first business, was buying it. And you know, we were able to take a business that was making maybe $100,000 a year and turn that into a $50 million company ultimately, right? And
yes, that's awesome.
is there any criteria that you look for? Like, what is your criteria when you look at a business? What should people be thinking about? Like, can I bring my expertise to this? Can I really innovate here and do this better than they did? Or what are you looking for?
So that's a really good question. And of course, it's going to depend on every person's situation. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. But
Sure.
what in general I tell people is the first one or two businesses you buy, because I don't believe in just buying one and done. I've owned over 50 of them so far. But what I tell people is the first one or two that you buy, you don't want something that is disruptive or really unique. You want something that is kind of recession resistant. You want something that does over $1 million a year and more in overall revenue, 5 employees or more in terms of staff, 5 years old or older. You don't want to buy something new because we've all heard those stats. 9 out of 10 businesses fail in 5 years. Well, then why would I buy a 2-year-old business? Let's make sure this gets here 5 year first.
Right.
And those sort of things. And if you do that well, you're going to buy a business that produces a solid income no matter what. In some of these cases, like what's an example of recession resistant? Let's say cement, asphalt, bridge building, right? Well, those are sort of businesses that even if the economy crashes, what does every government on earth do in order to re-stimulate the economy? Infrastructure, jobs. So now you're there and profiting even if the economy literally crashes. Once you get past those first two, then you can start saying, oh, this one has an untapped potential. And I can tap that potential and, 100x it or whatever.
So
But even in
you're looking
go
at
ahead.
business you can actually learn from too, I guess. Right. If you've
Yes.
not been a business owner, right? Those are sort of businesses that are solid that you can learn the ropes.
Yeah. You don't want to come in there and be the guy, right? If you do, then you're going to be running that business from day one. You want to come in, and if there's already 5, 7, 10 employees there, they already know what they're doing. As a matter of fact, one or two of them probably know how to run the business better than the guy you just bought it from anyway, because I know when I was employed, that was typically the case. So you want to find that where you can just say, okay, you guys are the experts on this. You're going to run it. I'm going to concentrate on more business sort of decisions, marketing, branding, deal structure, negotiations, networking, those sort of things. If I buy a widget shop, I don't want to be the one concerned about, well, how do we design the widget? Nope, I don't want that. That doesn't mean, though, you don't look for untapped potential. One of the brilliant parts about buying a business right now is a lot of these older owners, it's not that they're not smart. It's not that they're not good at what they do. They're just tired. We had a guy, this is probably about a year ago. We had a guy who made propane and propane accessories, right? And
Hmm.
as a non-native of Texas, I always think of Bobby Hill whenever I talk to this guy. But he made propane and propane accessories. And he was in his 70s. He had no marketing staff. He had no sales efforts, literally none, because he didn't want to work more. And he turned down an opportunity to private label propane cans for Bucky's gas station because he didn't want to work it. So
Wow.
here's a business you could have bought. You could have bought it with maybe $45,000 down. It came with enough acreage that the business didn't need, that you could sell off the excess land and actually make a profit the minute you bought it. And if you put in just 1% more effort than he did, you would get 100% better result. So it's already making you profit day one, and just a little bit of effort blows the thing up. Well, in a gas company, maybe I shouldn't use that analogy, but grows it substantially.
Okay, this sounds great, but my but then my question is, where on earth do I find these businesses? Like, are they coming to you that you're just the guy? Like, how does a normal person find a business?
You get a broker to do it. What you don't want to do is use the internet. There's this tendency to think that buying and selling businesses can be like real estate. So you go on these websites like Biz Buy Sell and all these other websites. And typically the worst place to find a business for sale. Because by the time they make it on the internet, the owner's already established in his head what he thinks the business is worth. Usually it's not the right number, but it's already locked in now. or they haven't been able to sell it. So now they're last ditch effort in just trying to put it out there to everybody. And here's the reality and the opportunity. Half of all businesses that go up for sale will never find a buyer. That's how many businesses are for sale. It's not like houses where, well, eventually somebody's going to buy it. Nope. Nope. Half of all businesses that go up for sale will never find a buyer. So you don't just want to go to the last ditch effort place. What you want to do is you want to find a broker, and that broker should have enough networks and connections and, influence in the city to kind of bubble some stuff to the surface. Because what you really want is you want a business that 4 minutes ago was not for sale. And that's where you're going to work that deal where, well, what do you think it's worth? Well, what do you need in exchange? Well, and we've done deals where it wasn't even a lot of money up front. It was other stuff because the guy was already wealthy. Last thing he wanted to do was take a huge tax hit just because he sold something. So we've done deals where we've paid people off with insurance because insurance you're not taxed on insurance. And there were some weird structures to that. We've done things where there's season passes to the baseball game for the rest of his life. We've done things where he gets a pension plan, so to speak, until the day he dies. A lot of creative stuff you can do. If you were to call anybody in my office right now and say, how many businesses are for sale? The answer is all of them. And this is where the opportunity really lies. Unlike a house that grandpa might have built with his hands and Fido is buried underneath the oak tree or something, the only reason you own a business is to make money. And right now, I own a little over 24 companies. And if you came into my office, I'm not selling any of them at the moment, but if you came into my office and said, Josh, we want to buy your rum company. It's not for sale. But do you know at least what I'm going to ask you next? What were you thinking? Because if the offer was enough, if it was attractive enough, next thing you know, I'm thinking about it. And when you use that broker, what they can do is they can go in there and without disclosing who you are, and that's key. They can go in there and say, well, just so you know, I have a party who's well-funded and they are interested in buying your business. And even if the answer is no, I cannot tell you how many times this has happened. Even if the answer is no, we're not interested to sell. About a week goes by. And that's an entire week of getting up at 6, going into work, reading the bad emails. Oh, that employee again. And next thing you know, they start thinking, ooh, maybe I will take the 2 million and just get out of here. And we get phone calls from no's that are all of a sudden, well, what did you have in mind? So That's the way I would go about it.
Yeah, they mentioned it to their significant other, and the next thing you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happens all the time. Yes.
So really 2 questions here. Who do you need on your team when you're making these offers? Because maybe you don't have experience in making these sort of deals, right? And you don't want to step in it and get yourself in trouble and get over your head. Yeah. So who do you need on your team, number one? And then what is the age group that you see could really benefit from is a shortcut to building wealth? I mean, is this for me who 54, or is there, my kids who are now 20, is this good time for them, or should they, get some more experience in corporate first? So talk about those things a little bit.
Yeah. So who I would recommend is on your team is a qualified broker. And I add the qualified on purpose because there's a lot of people out there who are absolutely terrible brokers. And this is not a plug for me. We can't operate in all states anyway. So it's not, my brokerage. Find a quality broker. A quality broker is going to be somebody who's owned multiple businesses before they even got into this. You don't want somebody who is like, well, I couldn't hack it in real estate. So now you don't want that person. You're also going to want somebody who doesn't have a crazy contract where they get paid fees and commissions without something actually happening. There is a epidemic of that right now of people getting ripped off through that. So you're definitely going to want a quality broker. You're going to want to have a quality transactional attorney. So probably not the attorney that you know. Even if you own a business already, probably not the attorney you know. That is the biggest mistake, other than not having a broker. That's the biggest mistake most people make, is they're just like, well, I know Bob. He did our employment contracts. He's a business attorney. We're going to go with him. Don't go with him. This is not like drafting your employee handbook or, coming up with the rules and regulations for your contract. Business negotiation is an art, and you want somebody who's an artist. So those people. If it's a large deal, over 7 million, you're going to want a pretty good accountant to go through that. Now, I'm never going to say don't have an accountant, but I will say if the deal's 7 million and smaller, you don't necessarily need one. And the reason I say that is because more often than not, you're going to be getting an SBA loan. And the SBA is going to go through that stinking thing better than your accountant will anyway. So why pay for it when they're going to do it anyway? So those are the key people. Other than that, if you have a spouse who wants to be involved, get them involved right out of the gate. I cannot tell you how many times I'll deal with a husband or a wife, and they'll say, yeah, we want to buy a business. My husband's not interested. He's got his own career. We spend months and months and months finding, negotiating, sourcing, all that sort of stuff, only to find out now the husband wants to have input, and it totally destroys the deal or delays it so long that the seller says, no, I'm out, or whatever. So whoever else is going to be on that team, get them on the team day one, or they shut up until opening day. With that being said, I would also say any of your entrepreneur friends, keep them off the team. And I mean it, because they think, well, I've owned my business for 20 years. I know business. No, you don't. You know your business. And there's a difference between knowing business and knowing your business. And I cannot tell you again how many entrepreneur friends have no clue what they're talking about, but will tell a buyer or a seller, well, I've been in business, let me advise you, and they're idiots on a stick. So that's kind of the team makeup. Now, as far as who does this work for? Yes, that's the answer. The answer is yes. If somebody came to me and said, Josh, I have $40,000 to go to school. Should I go to school or buy a business? Buy a business. If I had a 70-year-old who said, Josh, I always wanted life to be more, and I feel like life passed me by and I didn't get the life I wanted, great. The thing that buying a business allows you to do is catch up to where you thought you should have been. And you get to catch up now, literally now. If, let's say yesterday, there was an architecture firm and it's making the owner 700 grand a year, right? You're a 1%er. And I was making 50 grand my entire life. That was the biggest year I've ever made. The day I buy that business, what's my income? 700 grand a year. So you instantly catch up with decades of lost time. And that is the most powerful, like, when we sell a business, people cry because they literally wake up the next day and life is different. In Acquisitional Wealth, I had to put a chapter in there because unlike entrepreneurs who kind of build their way there for 20 years and can adapt to the new lifestyle, that's not the case when you buy it. When you buy it, you are poor Monday, rich Tuesday, good luck, Chuck. So it's an amazing, amazing phenomenon. I had this one case, I won't use his name, but this family of 7 lived in a 1,200 square foot house. 7 people, 1,200 square feet. And they never were out of middle class their entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that. They just weren't. Well, we sold them a business. They went to bed on Monday with a few $100 in their bank account, woke up Tuesday morning with a little over $1.2 million. Next day, in the 6 months that they've owned it, they now live in a 5,200 square foot house. They're buying a second vacation home. They have 2 luxury paid off vehicles because that change is instant. And when my agent went out there to close the deal with them, I get a call from my guy, Josh, he won't stop hugging me. Right. Because you radically just changed the guy's life. So it's for all ages. The oldest person I've helped is 95. And he said, Josh, I feel like a teenager again. I have something to live for. So the answer is yes.
I'm glad you brought acquisitional wealth back in the conversation because part of me is like, when did you? I'm sure this is in the book, and you can tell me if not. But did you wake up one day and say, "I'm going to do that"? Like, what would, or did you grow up with people doing this? How did you get here?
That's a good question. So, no, I graduated high school knowing that I needed to be an entrepreneur. When I graduated, I had very poor reading and writing skills, very poor, like terrible. And I was so shy that I couldn't order a hamburger from McDonald's. But I knew that entrepreneurship was the only way to go. And when I was kind of teaching myself how to read, that's how bad my reading was. When I was teaching myself how to read, one of the things that I read was magazines because they're written at a sixth grade level. And I'm reading the Forbes 400 list, and I noticed one thing was in common with all 400 of these wealthiest people. None of them had a job. None of them, zero. And I thought, well, if there's 250 million people doing the go to school, go to college, get good grades, get a job, go to school, go to college, get good grades, get a job, how come none of them have even lucked out and made it on this list? So I knew entrepreneurship was the way to go. So 3 days after graduating high school, and I use graduation lightly, I started my first business and it failed. And I started my second business and it failed. But one of the things I learned in that process is, unlike employment, where if you fail in employment and get fired, the odds of your next job being better or worse, it's going to be worse because now you have a track record of failure. And if you get fired again, another worse job. Whereas in business, I don't care who you are. If you start a flower shop and it fails, and then you say, hey, I'm going to start a bike store, the odds of your bike store succeeding actually went up because of what you learned the first time. So I got to business 3 and 4. I did a little bit of acquisition. Now we're talking about the 1900s. That's how old I am, right? So I've been doing this for a minute. So back then I was like, okay, well, I acquired my first business asset. I was like, okay, that works. And then I just did it. I didn't know that we weren't supposed to, I guess, is kind of the thing. Like, to me, it shocks me when people are like, this is such a revolutionary idea. How? It's been around since literally 4,000 years ago. We've been talking about it forever. If you turn on the news any week of the year, you see it. Just this week, Discover Card is going to get bought out by Capital One. What's his face? Mark Cuban sold the Dallas Mavericks. Boeing is going to buy Aerostar. Just turn on the TV. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. But because most people don't have an entrepreneur mindset, and I guess that's the only difference between me and other people, they don't see that. And instead of like thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and this is what most people do. Let's say I was a plumber for my career, right? I spent 20 years as a plumber. What are the odds, or what do you think would be the business I start if I were to start a business? A plumbing business, right? 9 out of 9 people are going to do whatever their career was in. Well, that's the difference. I never thought, well, what do I have experience in? That's what I should get into. Nope. Even though I was bad at school, I do remember the best way to do a maze was not from start to finish. It was from finish to start. So instead I said, how much money do I want to make? Now let me find 10 businesses that make that much money. Out of the 10 businesses that make that much money, let me find the 2 that I can get involved in. Out of the 2 that I can get involved in, what is it going to cost me to do it? And I just kind of went backwards. So fast forward a couple decades now, this is what we do. I buy and sell businesses myself. I buy and sell businesses for other people. We help nonprofits do the same thing. It amazes me how many nonprofits don't realize that your nonprofit, even if it's a church, can own a for-profit business and make money and not have to worry about people donating. It's just amazing. So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Most people don't. I was on right before this call. I was on a call with a church out in California, and they were like, oh, well, tithing is down and attendance is down. I'm like, okay, well, buy a business and then it replaces tithing. And they're like, what? You can do that?
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Wow.
That makes so much sense.
My mind is actually
I get that a lot.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about that all day. Thank you for that. So
Go
many
for it.
conversations I've had with nonprofits that say the exact same thing you just said. And now I'm going to drop you a little bit of truth and send them your book.
Well, let me add something to it. You could attract a larger donor to do it. So let's say you had the nonprofit. Rhett wanted to be a donor, but he's like, how successful are you guys going to be at whatever your mission is? Let's say it's planting trees, just to have an example. Well, you could say to Rhett, hey, Rhett, I know you've donated $10,000 a year in the past. Tell you what, donate $50,000 this time. We'll use the $50,000 to buy a $500,000 business. That $500,000 business should produce 100 to 150,000 bucks. Now that's going to fund us for the next ever. And because of that donation, it doesn't even have to be a donation. It could be a silent investor. So now Rhett could actually get his donation back, and that nonprofit's going to continue to make the income from the business.
And I get write-offs and all kinds of other
and then you could add
nifty
insurance onto that, and there's a whole. We could do a 2-day seminar on how to make that smiley and happy.
You should. So, tell us where can we get the book? Where can we see you more?
So people can get the book anywhere books are sold, right? That's what I'm supposed to say. That's what the publisher told me to say. Tell them they can get books. Yeah, wherever books are sold, you can get the book wherever books are sold. And then as far as what I'm up to and what I'm doing, we host a bunch of free classes, right? I'm not saying that people who don't are somehow evil, but because we have this other business entity, we don't charge for our classes. I don't have a mentorship program to sign up for, again, not that that's bad, but we don't. So if people want to learn how to do this, we teach it for free. We have a number of events coming up. We're always posting them. I just got back from New Orleans, Detroit. We have 2 coming up in Texas, Houston, and Dallas. And we do workshops on this all the time. People can find out more about me at joshtolly.com, JOSHTOLLEY.com. Or if you're like, dude, I already know I want to do this, then go to kingsbridgebrokers.com and find out more there. And then, even if you own a business, this applies to you. And that's one thing people forget too. They're like, well, what if I already own a business? Does this apply to me? It applies to you even more so. But we can get into that if you want to.
Yeah, no, you actually have a lot more leverage if you've already got something going.
You do. You do. And not only do you have more leverage, but depending on what your acquisition is going to be, sometimes the SBA doesn't even require a down payment. So
really?
let's I know, right? So let's go through an example. Let's say you own a pest control business. Where are you located?
South Carolina.
Okay. So in South Carolina, you got a pest control company. And every year you're making $300,000, so it's $1 million business. You have a $45,000 a year office manager, a $10,000 a year license to spray poison, a $15,000 a year lawyer, and a $10,000 a year accountant. What most business owners would do is say, well, we want to expand into North Carolina. So we're going to get one of those build to suit sort of commercial spaces, and that's going to take 6 months. And then we're going to hire some people. And then once we hire them, we're going to start to market and advertise. And hopefully a year to a year and a half after we started spending money, we might make our first profitable dollar. And that's literally how most people do it. Whereas opposed to that, you could say, well, there's that other business, that other pest control company in North Carolina. And just so I can do the math off the top of my head, we'll say it's the same, right? So now I could buy that one for $100,000 down and get the $300,000 a year in my pocket profit now. And then say, well, where do I even get the $100,000? Well, wait a second. Do you need 2 licenses now? No. Do you need 2 office managers now? No. Do you need 2 lawyers? No. Do you need 2 accountants? No. So now your competition is actually paying you to buy them. And then you add into that the fact that, again, if it's like for like and it's more of an expansion as opposed to a horizontal acquisition or something, the SBA might not even require a down payment at all. So now you're acquiring the $300,000 extra in your pocket and the new location for nothing out of yours. And I cannot tell you how many hundreds of thousands of business owners don't know that. Or let me give you this one. I tell people all the time, unless there's some sort of legacy strategy, you should never own a business longer than 5 to 7 years anyway. Because wherever you take that business in 5 years is statistically as far as you're going to take it. You know, you don't hear a lot of like 20-year unicorns, right? Well, we made furniture for 20 years and nothing happened. And then one day we became $1 billion. Nope. Wherever you take it in 5 years is about where you're going to take it. So again, just to keep the math easy, let's say you have a business that's valued at $1 million, that you're making 300 grand. And I ask you, I said, well, how much are you hoping to grow this year? Oh, 20%, which would be astronomical. But let's say you're an astronomical person. Great. That means your income is going to go up to 360 grand. The other option you have is take your $1 million business, sell it for the million, put that as a 10% down payment on the $10 million business. That $10 million business is going to pay you $3 million a year. So if $3 million is more than 300,000, why the hell do you still own that one? And the problem is people get so like attached to what they do and they get their identity from it, or, you know, well, that's just, I'm a mechanic. That's what I am. That's what I do. Stop it. No, you're an entrepreneur. That means I think, who was it? Jay-Z said it best. You're not a businessman. You're a businessman. So you have to take that and say, no, I'm just going to think about what works. And by flipping businesses, you're going to make way more money than trying to grow the one you're sitting in.
Yeah, I remember people said, or, you know, when I sold the toy company, were you upset? Were you upset about it? Like, that was one of the best days of my life. I was ready to move on, right? And like you said, I had given everything I could give to that. I was at a place where I had to, it was made sense to sell it because of the opportunity. And just also, you're done. It's time for a new challenge. It's time for a new growth. It's time for more personal growth, right? And so you get, I got personal growth out of selling the businesses and moving to the next. So I get what you're saying. It's, for me, it helps me just as a leader and an entrepreneur to actually move on to something else and take on a new challenge. So
absolutely. And before you get, you know, somebody writing in below this video saying, well, he forgot to take out taxes, that again just shows us what people don't know. Because sure, yeah, you owe taxes on that $1 million, but you don't owe them for 18 months. So I'm going to use the entire million to buy the $10 million business, because the revenue generated from that new $10 million business can pay the 25% tax that I'm going to owe on the original million. So even there, it takes care of itself. But you're absolutely right. But you bring up something really important, and that's the fact that you didn't find your identity in that business.
Yeah.
Or your frustration from like not wanting it to be your identity, right?
Yeah.
It goes both ways. And it's so interesting. I've always told people, if you want to know the truth about something, read magazines, because if they printed it, it was worth printing, and they don't print much anymore. And so to hear that you're kind of connecting the dots that way, I think people are going to get a lot out of your book, and probably a lot out of your free seminars and all of the other things that you're doing. Hopefully reach out to you as well, because this